Alright guys, so today we have some more rumors that are going to add a significant amount of fuel to this potential fire when it comes to Sony acquiring new studios or potentially striking exclusive game deals with these studios. Definitely some interesting things going on here. A few things I need to emphasize before going any further is, first up, obviously, as I said, these are rumors, so do not take it as fact. We don't know yet. We are going to have to wait to see how it plays out. But something I will add to that as well is that something is for sure going on. Right now, Sony has been very quiet, and there's a reason for that, and it's because behind the scenes, they're currently striking some deals, they're doing some things, they're making some moves, and we may not see the results of this until a while from now. But it seems as though all signs are pointing to something significant happening potentially between Remedy Entertainment and Sony, as we've been talking about. But don't worry, I'm not going to be speculating on the exact same thing that I've already made videos talking about. We do have a new rumor that's popping up that makes it just a little bit more interesting, in my opinion. It's something definitely worth taking at least a couple minutes to talk about. But there's also some more speculation to be done with the other studio that Sony has seemingly been getting close to, once again, and that being Housemarque. You guys know that anytime we talk about potential acquisitions when it comes to Sony, these are two studios that frequently come up, and there's good reason for that. So starting with Remedy Entertainment here, we're going to do a little bit of reading. It says, Remedy Entertainment were just recently in the news after they acquired the publishing rights to their Xbox 360 horror title, Alan Wake. But if new rumors are anything to go by, they might be making the headlines again for something a lot bigger than that. Sony Interactive Entertainment CEO Jim Ryan recently stated that with content now being more important for competition in the industry as a platform holder than ever, and with Sony looking to double down on their exclusives lineup with the upcoming PS5, that Sony is looking to acquire more game developers to add to their worldwide studios lineup. And it is looking like Remedy Entertainment, known for their incredible work on the likes of Max Payne, Alan Wake, Quantum Break, and the promising-looking upcoming Control, might be one of those studios. Push Square, in an article where they determined the likelihood of various candidates that could be picked up by Sony in light of Ryan's recent comments, mention that they've been told by, quote, a number of sources that Sony is lining up a bid to acquire Remedy Entertainment and add them to their portfolio of first-party studios. The outlet also points out in its article that Remedy Entertainment was recently visited by Shuhei Yoshida, head of Worldwide Studios. As always, it'd be wise to not take this with anything close to official and file this away as rumor for now. That said, if it were to happen, it would seem like a good fit. Remedy Entertainment has always been known for its focus on single-player narrative-focused games, which is something that they're not pivoting away from anytime soon. Sony's plans for their own games in the future and in the present are similar by their own admission. So this definitely adds more to this rumor, and it's worth noting here that seemingly there are some individuals over at Push Square, which is like an exclusively PlayStation-centric site that covers everything PlayStation, all the news. Seems that there are some individuals in there that have some close sources to Sony that are letting them know that Sony plans to make a significant bid on Remedy Entertainment and seemingly put a big effort into trying to convince them to be folded into Sony as a new first-party studio. I think that this is pretty evident. Whether or not this exact rumor is true, I think it's pretty evident based off of how close we've been seeing Remedy Entertainment and Sony get over the past couple of months, that something's happening. Now, I think at the very least here, something will happen with Remedy Entertainment. As to whether or not they are going to end up becoming a first-party studio, I can't say for sure. I think that there's a decent chance that that could happen, because if you think about it, it just makes sense for both parties involved. You know, there's no denying that I think Sony would have to do a lot of convincing to get Remedy Entertainment to sign that deal and to be folded in as a first-party studio, because they've been around for a while, and there's no doubt that they value their independence just like any other independent studio. But at the same time, you know, the areas where Sony can convince a studio like Remedy Entertainment to want to be acquired and to be potentially excited about the prospect of being folded in as a new first-party studio is by letting them visit their other studios, hearing about the type of freedom that the studios have, the type of budgets, the type of safety that these studios have since they are housed underneath Sony. That's something that Remedy really never has had, and so it could be very enticing for them to think that, we could make even bigger, even better games given more time. It seems very much like a win-win situation, especially when you do think about the type of games that Remedy likes to create. It fits in perfectly with the type of games that Sony wants on their platform, especially going into the future. So we're going to have to wait to see exactly what ends up happening. For all we know, maybe Remedy already signed the deal and they are currently in the process of being folded in as a first-party studio, and it's something we may learn about at, let's say, PSX 2019 at the end of this year. That would be very significant. Something tells me that Sony wants to have at least a few studios, at the very least, at least one new studio acquisition that they can announce and take a page from Microsoft's book where they can announce on stage that, hey, we've acquired this studio. But something we also need to pay attention to is that I think it's clear at this point that any studios that Sony is going to attempt to acquire or is willing to pay for and acquire and bring in as first party, they're going to have to be a bigger studio, a studio that's focused on AAA high quality games. And this is where, again, Remedy just fits the bill. So I don't know, if this rumor is to be believed, Sony is either in the process or they're about to be in the process of making a bid and making a big effort to try to convince Remedy Entertainment to become a first-party studio. I think there's a lot of people who would love to see this happen because, honestly, Remedy, they're clearly very talented and they have a ton of potential, and Control does look good. I did play Quantum Break. It was okay. I think Quantum Break was a strange game in many ways with the experimentation of a TV show mixed with a game. It was a little weird, but there was a lot of potential there. We know what they can do with games like Alan Wake and, where they started with Max Payne. So clearly there's a lot of talent there, and the fact that they want to continue to focus on single-player games, that's going to be a hard thing to do for them as an independent studio, where they don't have that recurring income. So, I don't know. There's just a lot of reasons here why I think Remedy Entertainment could end up being the next major acquisition that Sony ends up making. All the signs are there. We've seen, I've said it before, I'll say it again. We've seen Shuhei Yoshida visiting them. We've seen members of Remedy visiting other Sony studios, trying to get more comfortable. I will say this before moving on to the next topic, is that I think at the very least, even if Sony doesn't end up acquiring them for whatever reason, maybe they just still want to retain their independence, I think there will be an exclusive deal struck where Sony is going to get a big AAA single-player story-driven title out of Remedy next generation for the PS5. Could end up being Alan Wake 2, could end up being something completely new, but I think that is certainly something that is going to happen. So moving on from that, I want to talk about Housemarque and how apparently there is just a little bit more fuel to add to this fire as well, where it seems that Sony may have actually struck a deal with this developer for a new AAA title, which is definitely different because Housemarque is not known for AAA titles, but they did go on record saying that they want to shift from making these arcade type games to actually trying to make AAA games. Now, obviously, that's a major shift from what they're known for, and it's not going to be an easy transition for them, and we really have no idea what to expect. But it says here that Housemarque is in an interesting position right now. The Helsinki studio, famous for its superlative arcade experiences like Nex Machina and Resogun, is currently working on its futuristic battle royale shooter Stormdivers. However, while there doesn't appear to be much interest in this PC-only action game, potentially more exciting is its next project, an unannounced AAA title. It seems like a developer that's struggling to find a new identity, so the question is, what is it up to right now? Well, there are a couple of small hints that it could be working with Sony on its next game. Earlier in the year, Shuhei Yoshida himself paid a visit to the Finnish studio, which seemed to suggest an ongoing relationship between the two parties. Much more recently, WCC FTech spoke with Housemarque CEO. During the course of the interview, he spoke about partnering with platform holders, and he's quoted with saying, "Sometimes you need exclusive deals because money does not grow on trees." So it seems that the studio isn't against the idea of signing exclusives again, with Shu dropping by a while back and knowledge that Housemarque has more in the works beyond Stormdivers. It doesn't seem out of the question that its next game could emerge a PlayStation exclusive. There's even chatter that Sony could acquire Housemarque altogether. So obviously, this is something that I think, if I'm being honest here, I think it's kind of obvious that something will happen, just like with Remedy, between Housemarque and Sony. Whether or not they end up getting acquired, it's too early to tell. There's not enough evidence here. All we know is that Shuhei Yoshida paid a visit to them, and we do know, as this article states, that they are currently working on an unannounced AAA title. Now, to add my speculation to this, what I think is happening is I think Sony maybe has some interest in trying to acquire a studio like Housemarque, but I think Housemarque needs to prove themselves in the AAA space before Sony is willing to even talk about possible acquisition with them. Because we know, again, that Sony, if they're going to acquire studios, they want the bigger studios. They want the studios that are capable of making the big AAA games. We know that this is their strategy going forward, so it would just make no sense for them to try and acquire studios that are making smaller games, AA, single A games, or even closer to like arcade type games. So I don't think that we're going to see that happen. Now, when you think about Housemarque as a studio, that's what they're known for, but we know they're making a big transition here. They're making a big shift. Maybe Sony is visiting them to look at how their game's coming along to, basically have Housemarque pitch to them, hey, this is the AAA game we want to make. We have a vision. We believe we can execute on it, whatever it may be, and it's going to be big. Basically, we just need money. And so maybe if the pitch was good enough and Housemarque was able to sell Shuhei Yoshida on it, which the thing about Shu is, we know he is a gamer, okay? He's out here platinuming games. He's out here, making these deals and checking in on these developers, and I think we have a lot of trust in him because we know he's a gamer. I think he's like I would consider him a hardcore gamer, seeing some of the games that he's played. We can trust him. We know that if he sees potential in a game, we can be excited about that, and maybe he sees a lot of potential in this AAA project that Housemarque is currently, in the process of developing. Maybe they strike a deal where Shu says, listen, you make this game exclusive to the PS5 next gen. We'll give you the time you need. You do what you need to do, and we will fund it. And if it ends up being a big success on PlayStation and it's a big game and it seems like it has a lot of potential to be a future franchise, maybe then Sony considers trying to talk to Housemarque about possible acquisition, because as you can tell here based off of their CEO's comments, they're not in the best financial position and they clearly need to strike some type of deal to get further funding to be able to create the game that they want to make. So, yeah, I know that this was a lot of information to take in, and I know that to some people it may seem like we're, just retreading ground we've already been on, but there is new rumors and information popping up, and where there's smoke, there's fire, and clearly something is going on with Sony and these studios, and we're just going to have to kind of pay attention, and I will for sure be paying attention, and anytime we get new information, new leaks, new rumors, or potentially some new official information regarding this stuff, I will be sure to bring it to you guys, because I find it incredibly interesting, because the idea of Sony bringing on any new studios as first party is going to be very significant, because we know, and this is the important part I want to emphasize before ending this video, Sony has a standard. Okay, no offense against Xbox and Microsoft, but a lot of the studios that they brought on, the reason why people are not very excited is nothing against the studios themselves, but they're smaller. They work on smaller games, and we know that a lot of Xbox players are getting frustrated at the fact that Microsoft seems to be lacking in the AAA game department, and they don't really seem to be showing much focus on creating big AAA games. They want to create a lot of what people are calling filler content for Game Pass, to whereas Sony is out here saying the literal opposite. They want to give their teams more time, they want to give them more money, and they want their games to be the biggest and the best in the world. So with that mentality, we know that any studio they're going to bring on, that's the standard they're going to hold them to. So this is why I think this stuff is significant to pay attention to. If we were to see a studio like Remedy be acquired, we could see them be elevated to a level that we never expected to see before. Same thing with a studio like Housemarque. So yeah, that's going to do it for the video, guys. Be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I will be very interested to see what you guys have to say. Be sure to leave the video a like if you enjoyed it. Really helps it out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.